We'll say with that, let us begin. So today's daf is daf Ayin 70. We are picking up Emiras Hashem on the top of Ayin, first line. So the Gemara says as follows. So continuing in the sugya of refuahs, of different medicinal remedies. So the Gemara says as follows. L'chazisa. So what's a chazisa? Rashi says over here yalefes. So we'll say yalefes is some type of skin disease or really boils. Yalefes is. Ultimately, again, that's moist. So sometimes a moist boil. So the Gemara says, what should you do? Leisi shev chiti arzenaisa. Go ahead and take seven good wheat kernels. V'niklehu. Go ahead and burn them, literally roast them. Amora charta, on top of a brand new shovel. So take these 7 wheat kernels, roast them on top of a new shovel. V'nafik mishchaminayu, the oil that comes out of those kernels. V'neshiv, and rub it on the affected area. Okay, that's the remedy. Rav Simi bar Ashi avalei lahu ovei kocham l'davar acher. Rav Simi bar Ashi also used this same remedy for a non-Jew who was suffering from saras v'issi, and it worked. So apparently, not only does it work for this chazazis, but also works for leprosy as well. Incredible. Amar Shmuel. Shmuel said as follows: Hayman de machuli ba'alunchi de parsoi michya lo chaye. So I will say, so a person who is injured literally by a Persian sword. By a Persian spear. What's the chap of the Persian spear? If you look at Rashi 3 lines down from the top, bu'ulanchi parsoi benun cholio shal parsam shemitzarfin also b'mei sam hamaves. Apparently, the Persians used to go ahead and coat their spears. Literally, according to Rashi, it's forge their spears. But coat their spears with some type of poisonous water, Rashi brings down. So in other words, the Persians had this chap, not only were their spears, but Lamaisa, they coated it with poison. So if you got stabbed by a Persian spear, you were going to die. So the Gemara says over here, Shmuel says, a person who's going to get stabbed by a Persian spear is going to die. Lo chaye. Ad dahachi v'hachi. So, but nevertheless, again, while you're dying from the stab of the Persian spear, nisfulei bisra shmeina admuri b'chamra chaye. So we'll say, so as much as there is no remedy after one has been stabbed by a Persian spear, in other words, unfortunately, one is going to die as a result of the poison, but there is a way to prolong one's life. How do you prolong your life? So the Gemara says, go ahead and eat meat. Fatty meat cooked over coals, the chamra chaya, and undiluted wine. And I will say, now ultimately again, therefore what? Afshar the chaye porta, this will prolong a person's life for a little bit, umafkid abese, and you have the ability to go ahead and command your home, give your family like your final will and testament. So I will say it's a very profound Gemara. So of course, again, remember, all of these Gemaras have layers of profundity. Rabbi will say, what is the Gemara describing over here? The Gemara is describing over here an unchangeable situation. Right? Unchangeable situation. So this individual, in this case over here, has unfortunately been stabbed by a Persian spear. What happens after a person is stabbed by a Persian spear? What happens? They're going to die. There is no remedy for that poison. So what do you do in life at the end of the day when you are faced with unchangeable circumstances, right? We like to think that you could change any reality, and often we live with the conception that you could change any reality, but every so often we are faced with the reality that I cannot change. So what do you do in those situations? You maximize the reality you have, even if you have an inability to change it. So the Gemara says, a person stabbed with a Persian spear, they're going to die. They're going to die. That's unchangeable. What you can do is potentially eke out an additional few moments of life. And in those few moments of life, potentially go ahead and say the things you need to say to your family. You can't change your circumstances in life. If you can't change, the only option you have is to maximize the circumstances you have in front of you. Such an incredible Musar Haskell. So the Gemara goes weiter. Amar Vidi bar Avin, similarly, Hayman de Bala Zibura. If a person swallows a bee, mechya lo chaye. A person is not going to survive that. Not going to survive it. So what can you do? I'll say first wide line on Ayin Od Aleph. Adahachi v'hachi, but again, after you swallow the beet, thank you so much, no worries, thank you. Adahachi v'hachi, adahachi v'hachi means, unfortunately, while a person is dying, nashke revi asa dechala shmeina, go ahead and drink a revius of strong vinegar. After dechaye porta, you'll be able to live a little bit longer. Umafkid lebese, and you'll be able to go ahead and literally give, final will and testament to your mishpacha. So I'll say same yisod. It's really, and I'll say there is such profundity in these statements of Chazal, recognizing circumstances and situations that you cannot change. So if you can't change the circumstances you have, at least find some way to maximize them. Incredible. We'll say second wide line, Ayin Amud Aleph. Second wide line. Let's go by there. Rabbi Yoshua ben Levi. Rabbi Yoshua ben Levi said, Achal basar shar balefes. If a person ate the meat of an ox with lefes, we'll say lefes, Rashi says, could either mean like a condiment or beets, velan balavana, and then a person slept under the moon. Slept under the moon means a person slept in the outdoors. Belevi yudalit otesvav, either on the 14th or the 15th, b'tekufas Tammuz, right, in the season of Tammuz. Achzoso achilu. Ultimately, again, they're going to be impacted. They're going to get sick from achilu. Okay, so the Gemara says, so good. Good. Fine. Okay, we'll come back to it. And similarly, again, if a person eats his fill from any item, or is eating until you're full, so ultimately, again, achzaso achilu. Ultimately, again, he'll contract achilu. Achzaso achilu literally means this sickness of achilu will take hold of him. Amra papa afilu mitamri. This is true even if you eat your fill of dates. So the Gemara says, it's actually interesting. Suppose the Lasson of the Gemara is, if you eat your fill of any food, ultimately, well, again, if you eat ox meat with lefes, with beets, and go ahead, or turnips is actually the better term for it, not beets, right? You eat ox meat with turnips, you sleep outside on the 14th or the 15th in the tekufa of Tammuz, or you eat your fill of any food, even of dates, ultimately, again, you'll get sick with this achilu. So the Gemara says, pshita. Now, I'll say the pshita is, once the Gemara said, if you eat your fill of any food, you're going to get sick with this achilu, then the Gemara says, even dates. So the Gemara says, I don't understand, why would you think that dates are outside of the category of any food? To which the Gemara says, I'll tell you why. Tamri, misavan umishachnon, umishalshalon, umaashron, v'lo Dates are a quality food. Why are dates a quality food? Dates have the ability to satiate. Dates are also meshachron, means like they're good for the skin. Mishalshlon, they cause a person to be regular. Ma'ashron, they fortify the system. And even though, again, they're sweet, they do not cause a person to become a mifunak. We'll say a mifunak is like a high-maintenance individual. So again, normally a person consumes sweet foods. Maybe that makes them a high-maintenance individual. Dates are not like that. So I would have thought that since dates have all of these qualities, emolo, perhaps again, if you eat to the point of satiety, you wouldn't contract achilu. Kamashmala, no, you'll still get achilu. Says the Gemara, by the way, my achilu. What is achilu? On Rabbi Lazar, ish shal atzamos, some type of fire of the bones. My ish shal atzamos. What is ish shal atzamos? Am Rabbaye ish garmi, bone fire. Okay, so it's very helpful. Right, so I'll say. So again, what's interesting is what is this? You know what it sounds like? It sounds like some type of joint pain, right? So fire of the bones sounds like some type of internal joint pain. Okay, so the Gemara said, "Maya Susei, what is the remedy for achilu?" Abai said, "Amrili aim." My mother told me, "Kulu shakani tlasa b'shiva utresar." So I will say it's actually interesting. Before the Gemara gets into what the remedy is, the Gemara says in general. Abai says, "My mother." Abai says, my mother told me, normally when consuming remedies, right? Let's say you have a particular drink That's a particular remedy. Normally, these drinks have to be consumed for either 3 days, 7 days, or 12 days. Thank you so much. V'hai ademasi. This remedy, you continue drinking it until you are totally healed. Now, I will say, we don't know what the remedy is yet, but Rabbi is just saying, my mother told me this remedy is different, that you have to continue consuming it until you're healed. Kulu shakaini ali barekana. Normally, again, when consuming remedies, you normally consume remedies on an empty stomach. V'hai basar da'achal v'shasi v'ayala v'esakise v'nafek u'mashe yodeh. But this remedy really you should only consume after you eat, after you drink, after you come out of the bathroom, and go ahead and wash your hands. Okay? Umaisi lebuna dishasisa. So again, so what is the remedy? So here we go. So the Gemara says, you go ahead, here, let me look at Rashi. So you go ahead, take a buna dishasisa de talfachi. If you look at Rashi, we'll say, just Rashi is right opposite the first wide line of the Gemara. So what do you take? Buna dishasisa talfachi, mali egrof, min shasisa, shem machal ha'asu mikemach adashu melach. So we'll say the first ingredient is, you take a fistful of shasisa. Now, what is shasisa? Shasisa is a cooked dish that is made from flour, lentils, and salt. So you take a fistful of shasisa, ubuna dechamra atika, and a fistful of old wine, v'nagbalinu bahadi adadi, and you mix them together, v'nechol, and you eat it. Apparently, again, that's the remedy for achilu. Okay, the nichrok. So I'm not finished. The nichrok b'sadine, and ultimately, again, I will say so that's step one. So we'll say person is suffering from achilu. Person suffering from achilu. So how do you go ahead? What's the remedy for achilu? So number one, take a mixture, a fistful of shasisa, a fistful of old wine. Go ahead and mix it together. Consume it. After that, what do you do? The nichrok b'sadine. Wrap yourself in covers. V'nigne, and go to sleep. Veleka dinukme adekaymen afshe. Well, listen to this. And no one should wake you up. You should get up on your own. Can you imagine that, right? Going to sleep, getting up on your own. No one or nothing waking you. Adekaymen afshe. V'chi lishkale l'sadine minei. I'm sorry. V'chi kai. And when you wake up in the morning, lishkale l'sadine minei. Take off your covers. V'ilo, in other words, you have to remove those covers. If you don't remove those covers, v'ilo, hadr iluye. Ultimately, again, you'll contract the achilu again. Apparently, I will say from the Gemara's perspective, the disease itself goes to the cover. Essentially, I will say what you're doing, by the way, is actually interesting. Rashi points this out. Rashi says, v'nichroch gufei b'sadine, k'dei shiyischemim gufo v'yazia. What's the idea of wrapping yourself in the blanket? To sweat. You're sweating out the cold, which is interesting, or whatever, you're sweating out the illness. So the idea from the perspective of the Gemara is, when you get up, remove the cover. If you don't remove the cover, you contract the illness again. Okay, fascinating. Amrli Eliyah Rab Lasson. So I will say, Eliyah Navi said to Rab Lasson, listen to this, I will say, this is incredible. Echol shlish, ushesei shlish, v'hanach shlish. When you're eating, eat to 1/3 of your fill, drink 1/3 of your fill, and then leave 1/3 empty. Why? V'chishetichos ta'amid al miluach. This way, when you get angry, ultimately, again, you'll be satiated. What's the pshat? Take a look at Rashi again. V'chishetichos. Rashi says, v'imali bitnecha, and your stomach becomes full. V'imali bitnecha kas tamod al miluach. Aval im timali me'acha achilu shtia v'chishatikos tikva. So I will say, so this is fascinating Gemara on a variety of levels. First of all, apparently I will say anger has an almost satiating ability or satiating quality, which I will say, we know this from any time that we've gotten angry. When you get angry, you forget your other physical needs, right? Anger is such a powerful emotion. If you were hungry beforehand, you forgot about it. You were thirsty beforehand, you forgot about it. You were tired, you forgot about it. Whatever it is, and I will say it's actually interesting, anger often comes with a rush of adrenaline, right? It's not a good adrenaline, but it's adrenaline nevertheless. So I'll say, which is an incredible yisod. So the Gemara says, so if Yo said to Rabbi Nosson, When you're eating, essentially always leave room for anger, right? Because Lamaisa, if you get angry on a full stomach, it's not healthy. Anger in general isn't healthy. Getting angry on a full stomach is not healthy. They will say, what's dramatic about this Gemara? I mean, there's a lot that's dramatic about this Gemara, but it's also fascinating is Elio seems to be telling Rabbi Nosson a person should plan to get angry. Anger, Kaas, is one of the most destructive character traits. Right? The Rambam brings down that Kaas, anger, is perhaps the most destructive character trait. The Rambam brings down in Hilchos Deos. So what should a person do? I've mentioned this many times. So what should a person do if ultimately, again, they have a problem with anger and they keep on getting angry? The Rambam writes, stop getting angry. Right? That's Maimonidean wisdom, which is, we'll say, incredibly profound, because what the Rambam is saying is, you have a problem with your temper, a problem with anger, you're in control. You're in control. Right? Stop getting angry. Lamaisa, at the end of the day, don't pretend like other people are in charge of whether or not you get angry. Getting angry, ultimately, again, is a fundamental decision each of us makes. So it's incredible. But what Elio is saying to Rabbi Nosson is, it appears that anger, for many of us, unfortunately, is an inescapable reality. I hate saying that phrase, but not inescapable because I can't escape it. Inescapable because I choose not to escape it. I choose to allow myself to get angry. Yomi therefore says to Rabbi Nosson, take proper measures so at least anger won't have a more deleterious effect, because getting angry on a full stomach apparently is harmful to your health. Incredible. If a person wants to make sure that they don't come to any kind of intestinal illness, stomach illness, what should you do? Make sure to go ahead and dip your food both during the winter and the summer, right? Rabbi say this is incredible. And your suuda, when you sit down to go ahead and eat, so literally again, withdraw your hand from it, which means what Rashi says, shelo tamali es kreisecha. So apparently, again, Rabbi say there is a wisdom to not eating to your fill. Right? Go ahead and essentially stop eating a little bit before you are satiated. So we'll say, just the Sfarim bring down, there's a lot of commentary on this in general, that what the Gemara is saying over here is that the key to health in life, now the Gemara is talking about physical health, but it could very well be that this is the key to spiritual health as well, is don't fully indulge all of your physical senses. In other words, enjoy, but perhaps, again, don't enjoy to the point of physical satiety, but rather hold back just a little. This way a person doesn't fully indulge the physical part of their persona, the physical part of their life. It's actually incredible. Suudascha shana ascha mimena, the suuda from which you get hana, mishoch yad chaimena. Pull back your hand just a little bit. Don't fully indulge. Hold back just a little bit. V'altisha atzmecha. If you have to go to the bathroom, don't hold back. Don't hold back. We've seen this a number of times throughout our journeys of Shas, how Chazal understood that physical health really depends on relieving yourself whenever you have to use the bathroom. Amar Okva, Haiman deshasi tila chivra, achzasu visik. So we'll say the Gemara says, Ma'okva says, this person who eats tila chivra, or drinks tila chivra, Rashi says, is bad wine. Bad wine, right? Yain ra. If you drink bad wine, it's bad for your health. Ultimately, again, you'll be overtaken by visik. I will say, what's visik? Rashi says is chaloshos, weakness. So apparently, consumption of bad wine ultimately leads to physical weakness. Amrav Chista, shisin mine chamra havu malya dekulu samcha rechasna. So Rav Chista said there are 60 different types of wine that are all very good for your health. The kamdenamdir amongst all of these wines is sumka, they're red wine, and rechasna, they have a good aroma, a good smell. Griya dekulhu tilachivra. The worst kind of wine for you, it'll say, is this weak wine. Tilachivra could also mean like a white wine, right? A weaker wine. Okay, so this Rashi calls it yain ra, bad wine. Amar Yehuda. Haiman di Yosef bitziparne nisan gabinura. So I'll say if a person sits in the mornings, right, in the mornings of Nisan by the fire, v'shayif mishcha, and rubs himself with oil, v'nafik v'yosef b'shimsha, and then he goes out and sits in the sun, achzaso visik, right, will be seized literally again by this physical weakness. I will say, what he seems to be describing over here also is potentially like overheating. Remember again, Yomi Nisan, remember again already is the morning. So remember again, he's sitting in the mornings of Nisan by the fire, then putting oil on himself, and then sitting out in the sun. So there's a sense of overheating. So if he's going to be overheating, ultimately again, he could be seized by this weakness. Tan Rabbanon, Hikiz dam v'shimish mitaso. If a person did bloodletting and then engaged in relations, Havilo banim viskin, he'll have weak children. And I will say, this is now part, we've seen this motif in Chazal, that ultimately, again, that both the physical and spiritual state that a person is in at the time of marital intimacy could have an impact on the children that are conceived from that act of intimacy. So a person does bloodletting, which again I will say normally weakens a person, right? And then has relations, could have children who are weak. Hikizu shneim, if both husband and wife both did bloodletting, v'shimshu, and had relations again after that act of bloodletting. So havile banim ba'alei ra'asan. Ultimately, again I will say, so ra'asan, Rashi says, is chaloshim harbe, is a very weakened state. Machmas sheish lahen sheretz b'moach. As a result, I'll say Lasson is some type of parasite inside of the head. So a person, so both husband and wife both engaged in bloodletting, then halacha l'maisa, again, the Gemara says, to have children who are in an incredibly weakened state. Okay? This is only if you didn't eat something after bloodletting. Aval time midi, but if you ate something after bloodletting, less lanba, then ultimately we're not concerned with any type of weakened state. If a person came back from a journey, from traveling, and then had relations, havile banim biskin. Ultimately, the Gemara says they're going to have children who are very weak. Once again, I will say it's the same idea. Coming back from a journey, the assumption is that a person is already in a weakened state. So if relations occur in a weakened state, the children will suffer from this type of chronic weakness. Person comes out of the bathroom, they should not have relations after using the bathroom until they wait the amount of time of half a mil. So let's remember again, a mil is 18 minutes. So half a mil is 9 minutes. After using the bathroom, wait these 9 minutes before having relations. Mipnei, Rabbi say, this is actually why. Mipnei sheshed beis hakisi malavi imo. So Rabbi say, hearkening back to our shadim discussions of Shabbos and Sunday, right, our Koridaikos discussions. So remember again, there's an issue with, we saw this actually in Mesachas Brachas, that shadim often inhabited beis hakisi, bathrooms. Rabbi remember again, why was that? Because remember again, their Beis HaKises, their bathrooms were often in uninhabited, desolate areas, which are prime shadim locations. So there was a concern that ultimately after using the Beis HaKise, a person would be, somehow impacted or would have shadim with them. So engaging in relations after that could ultimately be a bit deleterious to oneself. Vim shimish, and if one does so, havile bana nichbin. He'll have children who are nichbin. And I will say, now what's a nichbin? So Rashi says over here, noflim machmas choli. They fall down as a result of illness. So I will say, it's actually interesting because many of the contemporary commentaries actually define this as epilepsy. As he's talking about falling down as a result of seizures. Okay? So the Gemara says, if a person has relations standing up, ochzaso avis. Now I will say, interestingly enough, ochzaso avis, I will say, are cramps. Now, interesting enough, the Gemara just seems to be saying perhaps this is just a physical reality. Person has relations while standing up, ultimately again they could get cramps. Miyushav, person has relations sitting down. Ochzaso deleria. Ultimately, again, they could suffer from deleria. Hi milamala v'hu milamata. If the wife is on top and the husband is on the bottom, ochzaso deleria. My deleria. Rabbi Shmuel ben Levi. Some deleria. Darda. So we'll say, here's what's interesting. Once again, the Gemara doesn't define what this deleria is. That sounds like delirium. Okay, I don't know if it literally. Hey, but instead what the Gemara does is the Gemara talks about the remedy for deleria. What's the sign for deleria? Darda. Right? What do you take for deleria? Darda. Okay. My dardara. What is dardara, says the Gemara? Amrabaye moriki dechuchi. It is, morika is saffron, but dafka saffron that grows by thorns. Rashi says, morika dechuchi, kurik hagadol begeder shel hizmi, shikorin shvil. So it's dafka saffron plant that grows by thorns. Okay? Rappaport, Elys Wohl. Rappaport, when he would take saffron, would often go ahead and chew it and then spit it out. So he would chew it and then spit it out. Chew it and then swallow it. Rav Papi Elys V'Shadir. Rav Papi would chew it and spit it out. Okay, so apparently different ways to use the saffron. Fine. Amr Abaye. So Abaye, so we'll say, it's such an incredible Gemara. Misha Eina Baki B'Derech Eretz. And I will say, now what does this mean? A person who's not a Baki B'Derech Eretz is not talking about a guy who has a problem with his midos, but rather is talking about a man who is impotent. Right? So I will say, what the Gemara is talking about over here is a man suffering from ED. Right? A person who is impotent. So I will say, this is incredible. So what is the cure for impotence? So the Gemara says, Laisi gimel kafizi kurtimi dechuchi. So I will say, go ahead and literally again take 3 kafizim. This is Rashi says, kli machzik gimel revios. So I will say, so a kafiza apparently itself is a utensil that holds 3 reviuses. So take 3 kafizim of kurtami. Remember again, kurtami dechuchi, which is saffron that grows by the thorns. Vinedukinu vinishkalinu bechamra. So we'll say, so what should you do? Grind up saffron, boil it in wine. Take this concoction, vinishti, and drink it. So we'll say, this was the Talmudic cure for impotence. Incredible. So the Gemara says, Rabbi Yochanan, hein, hechzirunu li na'arosai. So Rabbi Yochanan says, well, this is incredible. It's like a testimonial. Rabbi Yochanan says, I took this, and it restored me back to my youthful vigor. I will say, is that not incredible? So again, I will say, again, what's fascinating about this Gemara is a number of things. First of all, I will say, isn't it fascinating that like Rabbi Yochanan goes on record about this, right? So Rabbi Yochanan tells us, I had this issue of impotence, and Lamaisa, I took this concoction, and Baruch Hashem, it worked. Let's say it's also such a beautiful. There's a beauty to the Gemara, because also what the Gemara says is that like there are certain things that are natural in life, certain things that occur, and a person should never go ahead and be embarrassed because of the natural events that happen, especially those associated with aging. Right? There are certain, there's a tshuva by Rav Moshe. The halacha is that when a woman is in nida, so the halacha is she's not supposed. We did this in Smichas cover not so long ago. So we're not. A woman's not. Husband and wife are not supposed to hand things directly to each other. So there's a tshuva by Rav Moshe where it talks about a chassan and kala by Sheva brachas, where there was going to be an issue by Avdallah. I don't remember the circumstance, but whatever it was, is that the shaila was the kala chassan were going to be embarrassed if they can't hand like Havdalah directly to each other. So the Moshe said, what is there to be embarrassed about that a woman is in nida? Right? If a woman is in nida, that means that Baruch Hashem, her body is functioning and is working in the way it is supposed to be. He said, Moshe, the fact that people are nosy, they should just mind their own business. But Lamai said, there's no embarrassment attached to normal bodily things. And I both say that's part of what the Gemara is putting out over here also, that sometimes people are reticent to go ahead and seek out help for certain physical issues because they're embarrassed about it. So I really do think that Rabbi Yochanan comes on record over here and says, by the way, I had this problem, and Baruch Hashem, this concoction returned me back to my youthful vigor. They both say, why does the Gemara need to say this? Why does Rabbi Yochanan need to go on record? They both say, it's a chizik, because sometimes people are reticent to get help for certain things that are normal physical realities of aging. And not getting help for it could cause issues within a relationship, could cause issues in shalom bayis. Person should never be embarrassed about things that are normal physical realities of life. Incredible Gemara. I will say, mamish, everything is in Shas. Everything is in Shas. And we'll say, let's go back there. Says the Gemara, Shlosha Dvarim machishim kocho shel adam. There are three things that diminish the koach, the physical vigor of a person. Ve'eluhin, these are the three things. Pachad, the Rabbi say, what's interesting, it's actually an incredible Gemara. The Rabbi say, Pachad normally means fear. Here, if you notice, Rashi translates it differently. Rashi says, Pachad is daigo, worry. Worry. Shedoig al davar ha'asid, kigon tirud bizonos, o pachad oyev. So we'll say, this is fascinating. So pachad here doesn't just mean fear. Rashi says it means worry about something in the future. Let's say, isn't this incredible? Worrying about the future. Worrying about something that may occur. So pachad, derech, traveling, va'avon, and sin. Let's say, it's such a profound Gemara. Three things ultimately sap a person of his koach. So I will say, worrying about the future. Worrying about the future. What's the chap with worrying about the future? So I will say, worrying about the future, ultimately, again, you can't control it. And there's absolutely, there are any untold number of variables that could unfold in our future. And we know that if a person becomes preoccupied with worrying about what will be, well, see, you know what happens? That people are perpetually worrying about the future. It leads to life paralysis. You end up not doing anything, not accomplishing anything, because you are simply frozen and paralyzed by the future, by the worry of the unknown. Derech, so we'll say that one just seems to be a reality of travel, right? Constantly traveling and not being settled in one place saps a person of their vitality. And sin, I will say, is an incredible one, right? So we'll say sometimes if you think about it, the greatest negative byproduct of chait is not simply the commission of Aveira, but it's the fact that I'm utilizing precious life koach in the wrong way. Right? Each of us has there is a set amount, there's a reservoir of life, vitality, and strength that you have. It's not infinite, right? It's not constantly renewable. There's just like time is a finite, non-renewable resource, so koach is also a finite, non-renewable resource. And if I use it in the wrong way, if I use it for chait, then ultimately, again, that means it is not available for something else. It's an incredible, incredible idea. So we'll say these three things ultimately diminish the koach of a person. Dichsiv, so the Gemara says, Pachad, dichsiv, libi secharchar azavani kochi, derech dichsiv, ana b'derech kochi, avon dichsiv, kashal ba'avoni kochi. So we'll say, you see each of these three things have psukim that indicate that they sap a person of their vitality. But I will say, but in general, the Gemara is teaching us is this incredible yisod. Understand that there are certain things which use up your life koach, worrying about the future, constantly worrying about some potential unknown will sap you of your koach. I will say, derech, what does derech mean? Because, there are people who are always like running around like a chicken without a head, right? They're running in like multiple directions in any given moment. That saps a person of vitality. Choose a derech, choose a path and go down it. And lastly, chait. A person chooses to utilize their life of vitality in the commission of sin. Not only am I making poor choices, but I'm also using up my life koach. Koach that could have been used for dynamic activity is now unfortunately again being squandered for the pursuit of sin. It's so profound. Shlosha devarim matizin gufal shel adam. We'll say there are ultimately again three things matizin. Matizin gufo shel adam. Ultimately, we'll say now matizin literally means, Rashi says, means tear down. Rashi says over here, matizin gufo shel adam, literally deconstruct the body of a person. What are they? Ve'eluhin, achal mu'umad, eating standing up, shasa mu'umad, drinking standing up. So apparently what that means is these are unhealthy behaviors. So eating standing up, drinking standing up, shimesh mitaso mu'umad, relations standing up, chamisha krovin lemisa yosef menachayim. There are 5 things I will say that are so unhealthy that they put you in a state where you are closer to death than life. Ve'eluhein, achal va'amad. So I will say this is a person eats and immediately stands up. Shasa va'amad, a person drinks and immediately stands up. Hikis dam va'amad, you bloodlet and immediately stand up. Yashan va'amad, you're sleeping and then you immediately stand up. So I will say, if you notice again, these are quick changes of state, right? So eat, stand up, right? So apparently, again, doing these things immediately puts a person in perils a person's health. All right, Shimesh mitasav amar has relations and immediately stands up afterwards. Shisha haosa osa miyad mes. Wow. Both say there are 6 things that if you do it, you're going to die immediately. So both say, well, what this really means is 6 things. If you do all of them, again, it puts a person in such a perilous health situation that chasrom they could die immediately. Ve'eluheim. These are the 6 things. Number 1, haba min haderech v'nisyageya. So we'll say a person comes back from a journey and is tired. And we'll say, okay, then you're doing all these things. Hikiz dam, then you bloodlet. V'nichlas lebeis hamerchatz, then you go into the shvitz, right? You go into the sauna, you go into the bathhouse. V'shasa, and then you drink. V'nistaker, and then you become inebriated. V'yashin al gabe karka, and then you sleep on the ground. V'shimish mitasa, and then you have relations. So if you do all of these things, right? All of these things, ultimately, and also you could notice again, what's the common denominator? It's a lot of exertion. It's just a lot of exertion. So if you do all of these things, chas v'shalom, again, a person could die. Am Rabbi Yochanan v'husha son kisidron, but you only die if you do it in this order, right? After this order, okay? Am Rabbaye kisidron meis shalo kisidron chalish. Abaye said, by the way, if you do it in this order, person can chas v'shalom die. If you don't do it in this order, you're not going to die, but you will be significantly weakened. Ini, is that so? V'hamu uras avdele la'avda tlas minayo meis. But we'll say there was this lady Mu'uras, and Mu'uras did 3. In other words, her Eved did only 3 of these things, and he died. See again, even 3 of these things could imperil your life. To which the Gemara says, "Oh, kachu shava." That Eved, he was very weak to begin with. Right? He was very weak to begin with. So because he was in a compromised state, therefore 3 things ultimately sent him over the edge. Okay, Shmona. So we'll say there are 8 things. Ruban kashu miyutan yafeh. We'll say there are 8 things where a lot of it is detrimental, but a little of it is actually beneficial. The Elohein, right? Derech. Traveling, right? Traveling. And we'll say, Rashi says, Lahalik bidrachim. Ultimately, again, a little bit of travel is a good thing. Too much travel, ultimately, it could be physically depleting. Derech eretz, relations. So we'll say, by the way, there's a lot of profundity in this Gemara as well. Because if you'll notice, by the way, look at the rest. Osher, wealth, right? Malacha, work. So we'll say, even before we, right? Yayin, wine. Shina, sleep. Chamin, they will say chamin, Rashi brings down is drinking warm items and washing yourself in warm water. V'akazas dam, and bloodletting. Then I will say, now if you know, there's a lot of stuff in this list. If you notice, okay, so some of them, so if you take bloodletting, right? So bloodletting, what does the Gemara say? A little bit of bloodletting could be very beneficial. A lot of bloodletting could be detrimental. But I will say, if you look at other things in this list, there's also a very strong spiritual message as well. What the Gemara is talking about is a message of moderation. There are certain things that could be very wonderful and very helpful and very healthy in moderation, but in excess, ultimately, again, in excess could be detrimental. So, for example, derech, traveling. Traveling could be something very nice. But let's say if a person's life becomes about traveling, ultimately, again, that could be detrimental to one's personalistic accomplishment, right? Intimacy, again, in moderation, could be very healthy and very wonderful in a relationship. But again, an overabundance or an overindulgence ultimately could lead a person to become just a very lustful individual. Osher, wealth. So wealth in moderation, I will say, by the way, moderation doesn't even necessarily have to mean the amount of money you have, but rather it can mean moderation in the pursuit of wealth. The pursuit of wealth, the pursuit of material success could be something that is very healthy and very good, but ultimately, again, constant pursuit of wealth could be something that chas v'shalom is detrimental. Oh. Internet. Okay. Good. Right, malacha, work. So we'll say all of these things ultimately, again, so you see this combination. Ultimately of certain things that are physically detrimental if there's overindulgence versus things that can be spiritually detrimental in a sense of overindulgence. Okay, just fascinating. Good. So the Gemara goes weiter. Shmona memat mesazera. We'll say there are 8 things, which the Rebbe will say, memait zera means decrease semen. Shabbos say this could either mean literally decrease semen, or it could also mean decrease sperm count. In other words, 8 things which ultimately, again, Chazal felt were detrimental, ultimately, again, to a man's fertility. Here are the things that are detrimental. Melach, salt. Ra'av, not eating properly, right? Literally, again, famine or starvation. Nesek, which again is some type of blemish. Bechia, ultimately, again, is crying. So, good. So, Bechia, Shina al garbe karka, sleeping on the ground. Gordonius, coriander. Kishus shelo bizmana, hops that are not in season, or not during the season. Va'kozas dam lemata kiflaim. And I will say, bloodletting below, we'll see what below means in just a moment, is doubly detrimental. Okay? So, Kishim Shakash, the Gemara says, Tana, Kishim Shakasha lemata kiflaim, kach yafe lemala kiflaim. The same way that ultimately, again, bloodletting below is doubly detrimental for one's fertility, bloodletting above is doubly beneficial. So the Gemara says, Amra Papa, Shabbat will say, Amid Beis, Kiflai. So lamata, what does it mean, bloodletting lamata? Lamata min abeitsim. It means they will say, so bloodletting essentially below the testicles. They will say, it doesn't mean on this. In other words, bloodletting essentially from the thighs and below. So bloodletting from the parts of your body, from the thighs and below, apparently is doubly detrimental. Lamala min abeitsim. And apparently, again, lemaisa, bloodletting above the beitzim was doubly beneficial. Okay, the kisha shlo bizmana, eating hops, not in their appointed time, ultimately, again, is beneficial. So the Gemara says, I'm sorry, kash shlo bizmana is detrimental. So tana kishim shekash shlo bizmana kach yafe bizmana. So we'll say the same way, eating hops not in their time is detrimental. So ultimately, again, eating hops at the right time is beneficial. Rappaport says, Zmana Tammuz. The time, ultimately, again, the time where hops are in season is Tammuz. Shelo Bizmana is Teves. Out of season is Teves. Okay? Yomi Nisan, Yomi Tishrei. Lo Malu v'lo Kashu. Eating hops during Tishrei and during Nisan is not beneficial or not detrimental. Parav. Alright, so we'll say, that's the end. That is it. So now back to Gittin. That was a good run. We've learned anything and everything about Talmudic medicinal healing, or Ketara. Again, I should say, medicinal healing of the time of the Gemara. Then I will say back to Gittin. Amar kis v'get leishti v'achzakari daikos. So let's remember again, going back to the first Mishnah in the Masechta, thank you. So back to the first Mishnah in the Masechta. So remember again, what did the Mishnah say? If a man said to his wife, or a man said to a group of people, write a get for my wife. Write a get for my wife. And I will say, after issuing that statement, he says, afterwards again, he is seized by karidaikos. So what's talacha? Then in a state of karidaikos, he goes ahead and says, do not write the get. Ein dvarav ha'achronim klum. His second statement is meaningless. I will say, now remember again, why is his second statement meaningless? Why? Because it was said in a state of karidaikos. And since in a state of karidaikos, the assumption is that a person lacks capacity, therefore the second statement is going to. So we'll say, so therefore in this case over here, he said, write a get for my wife while he was of sound mind. And then he canceled the directive while in the state of karidaikos. So the Gemara says that second statement issued during the state of karidaikos is irrelevant. Amr Hashem Lakish, so Lakish said, Kosvin v'nostin get la'akol. So we'll say, now here's the interesting shaila. So the shaila comes like this. We'll say, so let's play this out. So Ruvain says to a group of people, write a get for my wife. Okay, they hear it. After they receive the directive, he contracts karidaikos. Okay? And now we'll say in the state of karidaikos, he says, don't write the get. So the Gemara says, what's the status of the statement? What's the status of the get? What's the status of the get? It's on. Right? It's on. Write the get. We'll say, the shaila is now, when should we write the get? So Amr Shimon Lakish says, Kosim v'nostin get la'alter. We continue. In other words, we'll say we literally write and deliver the get immediately. Now, we'll say, what Rish Lakish is saying is like this. Even though right now, as we're writing the get, What is Reuven the husband doing? What is Reuven the husband doing? What is he doing? What is he doing? He's saying, don't write it, don't write it, don't write it. Right? He's suffering from karidaikos, telling us not to write the get. Reish Lakish says, we continue the process. Right? We continue writing the get, because again, whatever he says during karidaikos, is absolutely and wholly irrelevant. Rabbi Yochanan says, no. In kosin ella kasheyishtafa. Rabbi Yochanan says, listen, we're not negating the get, but we're also going to wait to write it until he becomes healthy again. In other words, what we do, I will say, is we pause the process until Reuven is healthy. That's what we're going to do. We're going to pause until Reuven is healthy. So my time of Reish Lakish. So I will say, so this is the fundamental machlokes. So my time of Reish Lakish. What's Reish Lakish's logic? Diktani ein bidvar machronim klum. So I will say, Reish Lakish says, look, once you say in the Mishnah that whatever he says during karidaikos is irrelevant, then I will say, then what should we do? Continue the process. As Reish Lakish says, there's no reason to pause. Meaning, at the end of the day, hatzlacha l'maisa, whatever he says during karidaikos is absolutely wholly irrelevant, and therefore hatzlacha l'maisa, continue on. Rabbi Yochanan amar lecha ein b'dvar v'amachronim klum d'lechi misel lo tzarich l'mehader amluchei bei. Rabbi Yochanan says, when we say that what he says during karidaikos is irrelevant, what that means, I will say, is when he is healed, there is no reason to go ahead and ask him again, do you still want to give the get? Right? But however, but at the end of the day, we don't write it until he's healed. So I will say, so here's what's interesting. So really, it's fascinating. So according to Reish Lakish, Reuven, our husband, is suffering from karidaikos, is saying, don't write the get, don't write the get, don't write the get. Reish Lakish says, continue on with the process. Since his words are irrelevant, there's no reason to pause the process, keep going. Rabbi Yochanan says, when we say that his words uttered during karidaikos don't have an effect, that means once he's healed, we don't have to ask him again, do you still want us to continue? But lamaisa, you have to pause the process until he's of sound mind. So, what are they arguing about? Reish Lakish madame liyashen. So I will say, Reish Lakish says a guy suffering from karidaikos is the same thing as a person who's sleeping. So I will say, so imagine the following situation. Imagine Reuven says to two people, write a get for my wife, and then he goes to sleep. The Reish Lakish says, do you have to wait until he wakes up in order to write the get? Of course not. What do you do? Continue on. So karidaikos is just like someone who's sleeping. Rabbi Yochanan madam leila shota. Rabbi Yochanan says, no. Karidaikos is not like sleeping. Karidaikos is like a shota. And I will say, same thing by a shota. By a shota, we would say, let's wait until he's of sound mind before we go ahead and we give the get. Rabbi Yochanan madam leila yashen. Why does Rabbi Yochanan compare karidaikos to sleeping? So yashen u'mechusar maisa. I will say, sleeping is not missing a maisa. In other words, I will say, for karidaikos, we need a process in order to heal him. Yashen, there's no process. To which the Gemara says, Shlakish nami nedami the shota. Why doesn't Reish Lakish compare karidaikos to a shota? So here's the difference. Shota lo samya biyadan. Ultimately, I will say, by a shota, there's no cure for being a shota. I will say, many of us recognize this from our encounters throughout the day. Right? There is no cure for foolishness. Right? No cure for foolishness. There's no cure for shtos. But hi, samya biyadan. But ultimately, and I will say, for karidaikos, remember again, there is a remedy. I will say, what's the remedy for karidaikos? Bisra sumka agmuri b'chamra marka. I will say, remember again, the cure for karidaikos, the best Talmudic cure, fatty meat roasted over coals with undiluted wine. I will say, but did Rabbi Yochanan actually say this? Right? Did Rabbi Yochanan actually take this position? So the Gemara says, after all, the Gemara says, Rabbi Shmuel, Shachat bo shnayim or rov shnayim. But say, listen to this. If a man chas v'shalom had a situation where the two simon, I will say, his esophagus and windpipe were both fully cut, or the majority of them were cut. V'amar kisvu get leishti, and such a person was able to say, write a get for my wife. Hare elu yichtavu v'yitnu. We'll say the halacha is you write it and you give it. You write it and you give it. The Tanya, and we'll say we learned. So we'll say now what's fascinating about that case. What's fascinating about that case is okay. For Tanya we learned Ra'u maguyad. We'll say if a person was literally cut up into pieces, Ot salav ala tzliva, or hanging on the gallows. Beramaz, and he motioned, and Va'amar kisvu get leishti, and he said, write a get from my wife. Hare elu yichtevu v'yitnu. Ultimately, again, you have to go ahead, you give a get, right? You write it and you give the get. Shabbos say, so now remember again, what's interesting over here is as follows. These are cases where a person is actively dying. And yet the halacha is, if they say give a get, ultimately, again, we have them give a get. Now, we'll say, the reason why the Gemara is asking on Rabbi Yochanan is, Rabbi Yochanan was the one who said that when a person is not in a sound mental state, we pause the process. I will say, b'pashtos, in these situations where people are dying, one can make the argument that perhaps they're not in a sound mental state. Yet, halacha l'maaseh, Rabbi Yochanan is on record as saying, give the get. So I will say, so it seems to be a kasha. Hachi hashta hasam daitet zelusahi v'kechushta hu da'aschalebei. But I'll say, in these cases, Rabbi Yochanan will say, these people have absolutely solid intent. Right? The issue over here is not about intent. The intent, right? Their das is intact. I will say, what's not intact? Their physicality. Right? They're in a weakened state. But Lamai said their das is absolutely intact. Hacha daita shegishtahi. We'll say, in the case of the karidaikos, literally, again, their das is compromised. So we'll say it's actually interesting. So Yochanan will say, in the cases where the guy is dying, just because the guy is dying, that doesn't mean his das is not solid. So we assume the das is solid, but lamaisa, again, is the physicality that is waning. As opposed to the Karidaika's case, the das is not intact. Umiyamar Shmuel, we'll say, did Shmuel actually say this? Did Shmuel, right? Rashi says, Umiyamar Shmuel, Shachapo Shnaim Kosin Get Leishto, Alma Get Mechaimu. Now we'll say, so fine. So now we'll say, now the Gemara is totally switching gears. Who we're switching gears, we'll say, is this case of the guy who has his windpipe and his esophagus cut, right? So he's actively dying, and you don't recover from that, we'll say. So now Shmuel's on record as saying, you could write a get for such an individual. Who tells us so the Shmuel actually say this. So we'll say, so the Gemara says, the Shmuel actually says, so we'll say, by the way, I'll just pause just a second. What about so we're veering off now the Machlokes Rabbi Yochanan Reish Lakish. So we'll say, so remember again, going back for just a second. And here's what everybody agrees with. If the husband is of sound mind and he says, Kisu get lishti, right, give it to my wife. And then what happens? He's seized by karidaikos. And he says, don't write the get. Everyone agrees that what? That Allah Chalamaysa, we ignore the second statement and we go forward with the get. The shayla is, do we go forward with the get now, even while he's in this state of karidaikos, saying don't write the get, or do we wait? Machlokes Reish Lakish and Rabbi Yochanan. Reish Lakish says continue on. Rabbi Yochanan says pause. So we'll say the Rambam paskins like Rabbi Yochanan. That as much as that which he says during karidaikos, we don't listen to. However, halacha l'maaseh, we will pause the process until husband recovers from his karidaikos and then continue on the get. And when he recovers, we don't have to go back and say, Padre, do you still want us to do the get? We'll do the get, but halacha l'maaseh will wait until he recovers from his karidaikos. We'll stop over here for today. We'll pick up with the case again tomorrow of Shachat Bal Shtayim or Rov Shtayim. Oseh Shkayach.